Hilchos Yom also. The Nishmas, the three boys now who were killed. In the Hakdama of Shvisas also. Yesh b'klona arba mitzvahs. The Rambam says that we're going to have in Shvisas also 4 mitzvahs. Shtei mitzvahs say, 2 positive commandments, or shtei mitzvahs lo yisas, and 2 negative commandments. Zeu proton. These are them. 1. Lish bois b'im melocha. Let's go down to the Peirush. In this first parak, we're going to know what's forbidden to do on Yom Kippur. And it's equal to Shabbos, both the things that are rabbinical and those that are deraisa, except for 2 things. And as we'll see, and there's a special Isra of Yom Kippur not to eat or drink, and washing, putting on shoes, smearing yourself with oil, having relations. And when Yom Kippur begins and ends, Yom Kippur has a special din that begins earlier. Erev ad Erev. We'll learn in the second parak. We are going to learn about what are the measures of food and drink that are forbidden, and when a person is permitted not to fast, and when those have to fast with Rabbanon. The Parak Shlishim will tell you when one can bathe and other things that are pleasures, and when is it permitted and when was it also. Why was this order? First the Parak Rishon, because it takes in everything, and rather than a specific topic. Parak Sheni is before Parak Shlishim because it has the Isser of Koris, and Parak Shlishim is referring to those things that you get makis with Rabbanon, and therefore the most stringent to mention first. As we said, there are 2 positive commandments and 2 negative commandments. The mitzvah of to rest from work is a positive commandment. The chinuch counts it as the positive commandment. Shin Yud Zayin, the smag has a different number. The Rambam himself counts it as 165. The Rambam has 3 counts in his counting of mitzvahs, but this is one of them. The second mitzvah is Shloi Lasis B'Melocha. That's mitzvah 3:15. And say Rambam Sefer Mitzvahs calls it, the Chinuch calls it mitzvah 3:15. The Rambam calls it has a 3:29. The third mitzvah is to fast in it. In the Chinuch again, it's a mitzvah 313, and the Rambam has it as 164. The fourth mitzvah is not to eat and drink, and the Chinuch counts as mitzvah 316, the Rambam as mitzvah 196. Now we see there's a forbiddenness of doing melacha. It's also a positive and a negative. And also the fast of Yom Kippur, it's also a positive commandment to fast and a forbiddenness not to eat. And all these the Rambam says, I will clarify these mitzvahs in the following chapters. Learning Parak Rishon, Halacha Aleph, mitzvah say lishbeis melocha be'osor l'chodesh hashvi. It is a positive commandment to rest and not to work on the 10th of the 7th month, which is Tishrei, the first month being Nisan. And we'll go to the Peirush Shnema because it says Shabbos Shabbosin Hilochem. Yom Kippur is called Shabbos Shabbosin, although Shabbos, the transgression for Shabbos is skilo. Transgression for Yom Kippur is only chorus. Still, it is called Shabbos Shabbosin, the Sabbath of Sabbaths. This posuk is stated twice in Vayikra 16 and 23. The Maggid Mishnah points out that the words of the Rambam Shabbosin tells us about the mitzvah to rest is found in many places in the Gemara, Shabbos, Psochim, And the Sefer HaMitzvahs, he writes the Rambam that we were commanded to rest on this day from work and from action. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Shabbos Shabbos Yelachem. And we explained Shabbosin Asehu, and we have explained twice Shabbosin as it's a positive commandment. And anybody who does work on Yom Kippur has nullified this positive commandment, but he also transgressed a negative commandment. Shenema, as it says, it says on the 10th of Tishrei, you shall not do work. What is he liable for doing work on this day? If he did it out of his own free will, willfully so, chayav chorus. He is liable for that chorus. And if he did it unintentionally so, chayav chorus kivua. He has to bring a chatas, which is a definitive one for this transgression. Like every transgression of a negative commandment, that has a liability of chorus, if you did it willfully, on its inadvertent action, is a chatos that bring that animal. Doesn't matter whether a poor man or a rich man, because there's a different chatos which depends on his status, which is called korban oile v'yored. A korban that goes up and down, meaning it has a greater value. It costs more money for a rich man than for a poor man. It's also a chatos, but that depends on the person. If he's a rich man, he brings an animal like a sheep or a female goat. Oni brings 2 birds, or 2 doves, or 2 neyoina. One for a chatos, and the other one is a burnt offering. The third level is those who are very poor bring a mincha, which is a flour offering, the chatos. So thus we see that if you do melacha intentionally so on Yom Kippur, a person is liable for chorus. The Magen Mishnah cites the first Mishnah increases 36 increases Shabbat Torah. There are 36 death penalties of creases in the Torah. One of them is someone who does work on Yom Kippur. He's liable for chorus, which is a heavenly death, as it says, any person who does work on this day, that person is cut off from Klal Yisrael. And we have to understand, if women are obligated in this commandment of resting and not doing work in Yom Kippur, or they're potter because it's a positive commandment which is time related. In Shabbos we find that women are obligated in the positive commandment of Shabbos, which is also, Shabbos has a positive commandment of Zochas Yom HaShabbos and a negative of Shomer Yom HaShabbos. And since Zochar v'Shomer, and both the positive and negative were stated at Sinai together, they were said together. And anyone that's obligated to keep the negative is obligated to keep the positive. At Yom Tov also we find that the resting on the first day of Pesach, all the mitzvahs, positive commandments of Yom Tov is applicable both to male and female. In Yom Kippur, the Chinuch writes that the women practice, and if they did transgress, they nullify this positive commandment besides the negative commandments. The Milus Chinuch explains why the Chinuch obligates women with this positive commandment, because there's a mitzvah not to do work, and since they're obligated in the negative, therefore we have a general rule, they are therefore obligated in the positive commandment which is attached to it. This is found in the Chinuch, that since in the Melacha there's the negative commandment, women definitely are forbidden to do work. Therefore, they are also included in the aspect of the positive commandment. But the Hilchos Chinuch points out that B'Shar HaMelech, he goes extensively into this question, and he brings the Marash al-Ghazi and the Sefer Gufei Halachos. He doesn't accept this reasoning. Therefore, that women, as far as penalties, they are equivalent. Therefore, a woman is obligated in the commandment of Yom Tov, and he writes that Noshim are not obligated in the positive commands of Yom Kippur, even though there's chorus involved with it, and it has, therefore, since it has a penalty, it would technically be in the same rule as the others. The Mishnah Melech goes further and brings the Tosfos and Kedushin that disagree with the Chinuch, and they say that the Noshim are not obligated in the positive commandment. And he adds furthermore that the Chinuch writes that the negative commandment causes them to be obligated with the positive one, that this is what the Rambam wrote in Sefer HaMitzvahs, and he said that when the Rambam didn't explain the obligation of Noshim in any mitzvah, he means that they're obligated. Otherwise he says they're not obligated. Like Shvisas, he says they're not obligated. Or Netil Shulav, he says they're not obligated. But if he did not categorically exclude them, then they are included. Therefore, by a mitzvah of resting from work, and Yom Kippur is a mitzvah to say which is time regulated. Therefore, according to Tosfos, they're not obligated in, just as they're not obligated in Yom Tov on the positive commandment, so too they're not obligated in the positive commandment of not doing work, even though they'll be punished for the negative commandment. But according to the Chinuch and the Rambam, it would seem just like they were obligated in the positive commandment of Shabbos by Yom Tov, so too they're obligated in the resting which takes place on Yom Kippur.